Hello and welcome to IAMC Radio and Podcast. Let's explore some of the top news headlines for today, March 13th, 2025. We're starting in Somalia.
Yeah, a horrific attack unfolded at a hotel there in Bal.
Right, a hotel in Bal.
This wasn't just any hotel, though. Clan leaders were meeting there, trying to work towards peace in a region that desperately needs it. And Al-Shabaab, the group that claimed responsibility, is known for its brutality and for trying to, disrupt any progress towards stability. They even boasted about inflated casualty numbers, which is a tactic they use to sow fear and project an image of strength.
It's a tragic reminder of the challenges Somalia faces and how even attempts at peace can become targets of violence. And speaking of vulnerable targets, our next story takes us to Iraq.
Yeah.
Where a young Nigerian woman named is trapped in a nightmare.
Oh, it's a stark illustration of the dangers of human trafficking. Omowomi's story, she was lured to Iraq with false promises of a good job, only to find herself subjected to horrific abuse, including alleged rape by her employer. Wow.
She was threatened when she tried to speak out, and even forced to undergo an unsafe abortion.
Oh my goodness.
Her words paint a chilling picture of exploitation and desperation.
It's heartbreaking to hear her story, and it makes you wonder how many others are suffering in silence. This unfortunately echoes the experience of another Nigerian woman, Odunayo Eniola Isaac, who was similarly trafficked to Iraq.
Right.
But thankfully was able to return home safely.
Yes.
These cases underscore the urgent need for greater awareness and action to combat this global problem.
Absolutely. It's a problem that demands attention on multiple fronts, from cracking down on traffickers to providing support for victims and addressing the root causes that make people vulnerable to these schemes in the first place.
Now, from a story of human cruelty to a scene that feels ripped from a gangster film, we're moving to France, where a former mafia boss was gunned down on a motorway in broad daylight.
It sounds like something out of a movie, doesn't it?
It does. Jean-Pierre Maldera, a figure with a long history in the Italo-Grenoblois mafia group, was killed in a dramatic chase that ended with him being shot with what's believed to be a military-grade weapon.
Wow.
To add another layer of intrigue to this already fascinating story, Maldera's brother Robert mysteriously disappeared back in 2015.
It makes you wonder if these events are somehow connected, and it reminds us that the world of organized crime, with its shadowy figures and ruthless tactics, is never far from the headlines.
Exactly, and it raises questions about the enduring power of these criminal networks and the ongoing challenges of bringing them to justice.
Shifting gears now to some more positive news out of Nigeria, where a discriminatory policy in the police force has finally been overturned.
Yes, that's right. The rule that allowed for the dismissal of unmarried pregnant policewomen has been removed, marking a significant step towards gender equality within the force. You might recall the case of Officer Amola Olajide in 2021, who was dismissed simply for being pregnant while unmarried. This policy change sends a powerful message about inclusion and fairness.
It's a victory for women's rights, and a sign of progress within an institution that has often been criticized for its practices. But unfortunately, our next story takes us to a region grappling with conflict and instability. A tense hostage situation is unfolding in Pakistan on a hijacked train.
The Bal Liberation Army, or BLA, a separatist group fighting for independence in the Balochistan region, has claimed responsibility and is demanding the release of prisoners. The situation is incredibly volatile, with casualties already reported, and security forces facing the daunting task of trying to resolve the situation without further bloodshed.
The BLA has often resorted to violence to draw attention to their cause, and this hijacking highlights the complex challenges facing Pakistan, particularly in the Balochistan region.
Indeed, Balochistan has been a hotbed of unrest for years, with the BLA and other groups engaging in armed struggle against the Pakistani government. The region is also strategically important because of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, a massive infrastructure project that runs through it.
So this incident isn't just about a hijacked train. It's about a region caught in a web of political, economic, and security concerns, now from Pakistan to the United States, where President Trump's decisions are once again making headlines, this time concerning NASA.
There's been a shakeup at the agency with the dismissal of the chief scientist and other personnel.
Oh, wow.
These moves are raising concerns about the future of climate change research, especially with the elimination of the office of the chief scientist.
And there are whispers of even more budget cuts on the horizon. This comes after earlier reports this year that suggested potential layoffs were being considered.
Some are hoping that Jared Isaacman, Trump's nominee to head NASA, might intervene to prevent further cuts. but only time will tell what direction the agency will take under his leadership.
Speaking of leadership facing difficult challenges, let's turn our attention back to Nigeria, where the government is grappling with the threat of improvised explosive devices, or IEDs.
They're taking a multi-pronged approach to this issue. We're seeing plans to arraign suspected bomb manufacturers and a commitment to work with the US and Britain to establish a counter-IED center. There's also a focus on regulating materials like urea fertilizer, which can be used to make these deadly devices.
It sounds like they're trying to tackle this problem from both a security and a preventative standpoint, which makes sense.
Exactly. And it's important to note that the NCTC coordinator emphasized that all legal proceedings will adhere to due process and respect for human rights. They're also working on a biometric database to help identify individuals with expertise in IED manufacturing, which could be a valuable tool in preventing future attacks.
It's encouraging to see these proactive measures being taken to address such a serious threat. Now let's shift gears and take a look at how Americans are viewing President Trump's handling of the economy.
Okay, a recent Reuters Ipsos poll reveals that many Americans believe Trump's economic decisions have been erratic and haven't done much to alleviate the rising cost of living.
Tariffs in particular seem to be a major point of concern, with many people worried about the impact they're having on prices.
It's interesting because Trump has often pointed to the stock market as a sign of economic health, but this poll suggests that public opinion might be shifting, with people feeling the pinch in their wallets more acutely than they're seeing gains in their portfolios.
And adding to the mix are the ongoing tensions between the US and Canada on the trade front.
Canada's newly elected prime minister has taken a strong stance against some of Trump's policies and has even vowed to maintain tariffs on American goods until the U.S. shows Canada more respect.
It seems like a classic example of how domestic politics can spill over into international relations, creating ripple effects across borders.
Yeah, it certainly highlights the interconnected nature of our world and how actions taken in one country can have consequences far beyond its borders. Speaking of international relations, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine continues to cast a long shadow over global affairs.
There is a glimmer of hope, however, with a proposed 30-day ceasefire on the table. Ukraine has agreed to the terms, but Russia's decision is still pending.
It's a delicate situation, with the potential for both progress and further escalation. President Trump has issued strong warnings to Russia, threatening devastating sanctions if they reject the ceasefire.
It's a high-stakes gamble, especially considering Trump's previous praise for Putin. He's also spoken about the possibility of World War III, which adds another layer of anxiety to this already tense situation.
Vice President J.D. Vance has been emphasizing the need for Russia's cooperation in de-escalating the conflict. It's a complex situation with no easy solutions.
These headlines really paint a picture of a world grappling with a wide range of challenges, from terrorism and human trafficking to organized crime and geopolitical tensions. It can feel overwhelming at times.
It's true, but it's also important to remember that within these complex stories, there are individuals and communities striving for peace, justice, and a better future, like Omowunmi, who bravely shared her story to shed light on the horrors of human trafficking, or the activists in Nigeria pushing for police reform and gender equality.
Their courage and resilience are inspiring, and it reminds us that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable obstacles, there are people working to make a difference.
What stands out to you as particularly significant from today's headlines?
For me, it's the contrast between the stories that highlight human vulnerability and those that showcase human resilience. On one hand, we have Omowunmi's story, which is a stark reminder of the exploitation and suffering that exists in the world.
Yeah, it's a story that forces us to confront the dark side of globalization and the urgent need to protect those who are most vulnerable.
Exactly. But then we also have stories like the policy change in the Nigerian police force, which demonstrates that progress is possible even in institutions that have been resistant to change.
It's a reminder that systems can be reformed and that individuals can make a difference by challenging injustice and advocating for equality. It's a testament to the power of perseverance and the belief in a better future.
Another story that struck me was the NASA shakeup. It makes you wonder about the direction of scientific research and exploration under the current administration. Are we prioritizing short-term gains over long-term investments in knowledge and innovation?
It's a valid concern. Scientific advancements, particularly in areas like climate change research, are crucial for understanding and addressing the challenges facing our planet. Cutting funding for such research could have far-reaching consequences.
It raises questions about the role of science in shaping policy decisions and whether we're adequately investing in the future.
It also highlights the importance of informed public discourse and the need for citizens to engage with these issues and hold their leaders accountable.
The hostage situation in Pakistan is another example of how complex these global issues can be. It's not just about a hijacked train, it's about a region struggling with separatist movements, political instability, and economic disparities, and it's all playing out against the backdrop of the China-Pakistan economic corridor, which adds another layer of geopolitical complexity.
Right. It's a reminder that seemingly isolated incidents are often connected to larger global trends and power dynamics, and it underscores the need for nuanced understanding and careful diplomacy when addressing such conflicts.
And then we have the ongoing tensions between the U.S. and Canada, which show how quickly economic disputes can escalate into political standoffs.
It's a classic example of how interconnected our world is and how actions taken in one country can have unintended consequences elsewhere. It also raises questions about the future of globalization and the need for greater cooperation and understanding between nations.
It seems like we're living in an era of heightened uncertainty, where the old rules no longer apply and the future feels increasingly unpredictable. It can be unsettling, but it also presents an opportunity for us to reevaluate our priorities and consider new ways of addressing these challenges.
I agree. It's a time for critical thinking, thoughtful dialogue, and a willingness to challenge assumptions.
Yeah, it's call to action for all of us, isn't it? To be informed, to engage, and to act with intention, knowing that our choices matter.
Absolutely, and to approach these issues with a sense of humility and a willingness to learn from each other, because none of us have all the answers, but together we can strive to create a better world.
Well said. And on that note of collective responsibility, we'll wrap up this exploration of today's top news headlines.
It's been a fascinating discussion, full of thought-provoking insights and important reminders about the interconnected nature of our world.
Indeed. And we hope that it's left you, our listener, with a renewed sense of awareness and a desire to engage more deeply with the issues that shape our lives.
Because the more informed and engaged we are, the better equipped we'll be to navigate the complexities of our time and to work towards a future that's more just peaceful and sustainable for all.
Thank you for listening to today's top news headlines on IEMC Radio and Podcast.